All right. So I'm with Bob Martinez, retired NYPD, who came up in this article that we've been investigating about Brad Badal and Bruce Bendell and procurement with the NYPD. And so I got a few questions for you, Bob. And I talked to a bunch of people. This is the first time I'm talking to you. So if there's any misinformation or misconceptions, I wanted to clear them right away, and I want to let you say your piece. So can you just tell me who you are and your background in the NYPD? Which I did some research, and it speaks for itself. You have a very decorated career. I just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I started with the NYPD back in June of 1986 as an auto service worker, and then eventually a mechanic. And I was a mechanic, first line mechanic for 10 years. And then through civil service tests, I became a first line supervisor, and basically a foreman. And I did that for 10 years. Then after that, I had some discretionary promotions. And then after that, eventually I became the director of the fleet. I think back in 2006, I don't remember 100%. And then approximately 3.5 years after that, I was asked to go and take over the Support Services Bureau. I actually replaced the two-star chief. First time that's ever happened in the history of the NYPD. I went down as executive director, and then when commissioner, that was under Commissioner Kelly. Then under Commissioner Bratton, he promoted me to deputy commissioner. Once again, the first time that ever happened. And then I ended up being in that position for 12.5 years, the longest person ever to run the Support Services Bureau for that period of time. I served under 5 different police commissioners. Along my way, while I was a mechanic, I finished my associate in mechanical engineering. Then I went and got my bachelor's degree in electromechanical engineering technology. And then when I became director, I went back to NYU, got my master's degree in executive management. And then I also did a special program up at the Kennedy School at Harvard, also executive management profile. So I have both a hands-on background, technical, both from being a mechanic, being an engineer, and then actually hands-on being a executive leader per se.
Okay. So you were the deputy commissioner of support services, correct?
Right. So that was from 2014. Prior to that, I was the executive director from 2010 to when Bratton came, which I believe was September of 14. Oh, a little before. And then he goes, "Why are you the executive director? You have a over $100 million budget. You got 900 people. You got 39 locations." Because when I went from fleet to support services, I didn't just have fleet. I had property clerk. I had central records and printing. Much bigger job, and running fleet is pretty simple compared to running a property clerk. So just
Gotcha. So you had fleet, and then you moved to larger. Okay. So did you personally interact with Brad Badal while you were doing the fleet, the major police supply?
No,
While you were there, did you interact with Bruce Bendell?
no, I didn't even. I mean, I know he's involved with major, but just through news articles. I never had personal.
Okay, but did you interact with major police supply?
Not at my level. My people that work for me did, because in other words, we would write the specifications for stuff, and the fleet guys would interact with them, but I never directly interacted with them, and I would review specs and stuff like that, but I didn't write specs. I didn't. Certainly, I gave guidance on that stuff because if you did background on me, I don't know if you saw, I've gone all over the country teaching about lights. I'm kind of like a lights and sirens expert, rumbless sirens, colors, frequencies. There's a whole science to lights and sirens, and if you do it right, you can protect your cops. And knock on wood, since I was director to now, I think only one NYPD officer got killed in a vehicle accident that had nothing to do with the vehicle. So I think I have a pretty stellar background and prove, because we were one of the first departments in the state to go to blue lights when they changed the law. We were the first department to have rumbless sirens. We're the first department to have ballistic panels and shields, all about saving cops, protecting cops. That's what my career is about: honesty, integrity, fairness, and that's why I was actually in shock when I read your article. To be honest with you.
Okay, well, that's information I got. Now, yeah, we're corrected here. Now, major police supply. So they were a contractor with you. You were aware of the contract, correct?
Well, they're a contract with the city, so you got. I don't know how much you know about city contracts and
Why don't you educate
specs.
all of us? Educate all of us.
Okay, so the way it works is, let's say we want a particular, we need a vehicle, right? And so we write a specification. So we have tech guys, the tech office at Fleet Services Division, and that's what they do. I was never a tech writer. I reviewed specs, but I never wrote the specs. And just for the record, we've been using federal signals since 1950s. It's not like something, it's something that when I came on, they were already using federal signal. So the way the city system works, we would write with NYPD or any city agency will write a spec for a particular vehicle. Now the vehicle has to meet the mission and be safe. That's the two most important things. And then if it can go green, like with a hybrid vehicle, fully electric, we try to do that. But the vehicle needs to meet the mission. So when we write a spec, we can't even say we want a Ford Explorer. We describe what we want, and almost every statement. I don't know if you ever read a spec, but if you read a spec, most of the time at the end of the description of a part, it will say or equal, or equal, or equal, because, and once again, we don't govern the bid process. That goes through DCAS. Have you spoken to anybody in DCAS or?
I spoke to a whole bunch. I spoke to a whole bunch of people. Yeah, I don't want to give away who I'm speaking to, but yeah, I spoke to a whole bunch of people.
Okay, so the way they do it, rewrite a spec. We have to, prove we have money in the budget to do that, and it's usually a 2-year contract. It's a citywide contract. Any city agency can buy off that contract with a 3rd-year option. So we write the spec. That spec goes to bid, and then there's a pre-bid. So anybody who has a complaint or a question or wants to bid with exception, they come to the pre-bid. So this is routine. It happens all the time. After the pre-bid, then it goes out to bid, and then it goes by the lowest price. Who's going to deliver the product without exception for the lowest price? And then sometimes there's woman-owned minority business things. Sometimes the rules change from mayor to mayor. Sometimes if you're in the 5 boroughs, you could be a higher price. Woman-owned business could be twice as much money. So they have all these things, and really not my end of the business. And to some extent, I hate to say that, I really don't care. Yeah, my thing is to get the best equipment and the safest vehicle for the cops. So then that goes out to bid, and then the different dealers bid, and Major wins. Yes, a majority of the contracts, but Schultz Ford wins contracts. Sunrise Chevrolet wins contracts. There's guys upstate New York that wins contracts. So, do they win the biggest majority? Absolutely, and it is what it is. I have a few ideas of why and what have you, and there was things that I tried to straighten out over the years that didn't pan out.
Now, I have a specific question about Bruce Bendell. It became very big news for 2 reasons. One, there was the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs, and there was a Department of Investigation case against the Major Auto, which was part of the Major Police Supply, who had the agreement with the General Signal Corporation, Federal Signal Corporation, and Bruce Bendell had a tax case in the Eastern District of New York for unpaid taxes related to the company, where it became public information by 2019 that he was involved. And I know that DOI had sent a letter that terminated the agreement and terminated the arrangement where Major Police Supply could supply anything to the city of New York. Were you aware of that during your time?
Yeah, that was. I wasn't directly involved, but it was in the newspaper, so everybody was aware of it. And I think it was for a 2 or 3 year period, we weren't allowed to buy anything from Major Police Supply. And once again, Major Police Supply was really the upfitter. Major Chevrolet or the Major Auto Group, I think is what the official name is, or whatever. They were the ones that hold the contract. And it was actually interesting because there were some names of people that I was surprised weren't in the articles. You seem to have done a lot of background, but there was other people involved that you didn't even mention. So I was just surprised about that.
Yeah, well, there's some people that are being talked to, and it's actually being looked at a little bit by certain people. With this, so I don't want to get further into that, but there'll be follow-ups and there'll be more characters coming into this story. But I just wanted to get your understanding of what happened at that point, because to my knowledge and my research has shown that Major Police Supply, they initially issued the prohibition letter, and then they changed the corporate entity structure and took Bruce Bendell out of Major Police Supply, and then they reinstated the contract and said Major Police Supply could continue. So were you aware of that?
No, that's all through DCAS. We're the end user. We don't get involved with that. We write the contract. We get a budget to buy vehicles, and we do our best to get them because they have to all be delivered by June 30th. So you get your money in August. You got to get the contracts in place. You got to do the purchase orders, and then they only build police vehicles certain times of the year, and you got to hope that that window falls in the window that you can get it delivered by June 30th. Otherwise, that money goes away because it's expense money. So there's three different pots of money you buy vehicles. One's capital, one's expense, and one is grants. The grant money and the capital can roll from year to year. Expense money cannot roll. After July 1st, that money goes away. So if the vehicle's not on the ground and you don't receive it, that money's gone.
Okay. Were you ever contacted by any investigators, by DOI, by federal, by state investigators about major police supplier Bruce Bendell?
No.
Okay. Were you aware of anybody that was contacted?
No.
You aware about anybody received gifts or favors or incentives from major police supply?
No. And if I was, I would have straightened it out because like you did your research on me. If you know anybody who knows me, I'm all about integrity. I'm all about fairness. I'm all about, I had one or two questionable guys, one particular guy that was working the spec office. And I went to a conference and I saw the way that he was interacting with vendors and I removed him. And, I came back from that conference. I said, this guy is not allowed to deal with vendors. I don't want him being around. I mean, he was just, what he was doing on the ground at the show floor, he took so much free stuff because at the shows, they give you little giveaways, right? That he had to have it shipped back to his office in boxes. So I was like, and then he was wearing a wife beater t-shirt, so I was like, he's not representing the NYPD in a professional manner. He's all about, what's in it for me. And I removed him and he was gone. And one thing I can honestly say my whole time as director and support services that to my knowledge, zero corruption and zero fraud with anything like that. And everybody knew that was how I lived my life. And every one of our vehicles is exactly the same. If you look at an NYPD vehicle, the decals are exactly the same, the lights are exactly the same, the way the lights work are exactly the same because standardization is so critical when you have cops that will go from a van to a car into a different car into a highway patrol car. Everything has to be uniform.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to, I'll put out another article just that we talked. I think to get, you on the record saying, that, your involvement and how your end of things worked. But to your knowledge, any of the issues that weren't on your end, if there's anything that was a problem, might be a decaf. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, well, we're not the only ones that bought off that contract either. Fire department buys off that contract, sheriff's department. I mean, I was actually surprised the other day. I went to the city and Triborough bridge cars have all our same equipment, have the ballistic panels and the glass and the light bar. I was like, wow, I didn't know they bought off our contract. So we would write the contract, but once again, it's a citywide contract. It's a 2-year requirement contract that any city agency, in fact, more than even just a city agency, I don't know if you know, any government can buy off another government's contract as long as the original government does it. And that's what a lot of these states do that. They call cooperatives, like the state of Minnesota does, the state of Texas. So if I wanted to buy something off the state of Minnesota's contract, I could buy it. They just add 5%. They actually make a profit and let another government use the contract. But that's, we're the end user, so all we want is the safest vehicle for the cop. That's it. And that's why, we would spec it with the best equipment and standardization,
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, but I just, I have no problem. If you have a question about something comes up, if you just want my take on it, but like I say, I have my whole tenure there at NYPD, especially while director and the deputy commissioner there, that I have probably, I don't know if if you did the research on me, we were rated one of the best fleets in North America from 2008 until the year we left. I mean, that's not by accident.
No, you did a great job. There was a lot of stuff happening. You're right, but there was a lot supplied by majors, so that's the big issue.
Well, yeah. So one thing I will say is that when I did have some upfitters, complain about the situation, but it's not uncommon for whether it's federal whaling, because there was times where we spec'd in some whaling products, and Brad had to buy them from the whaling guy. And they hated one another. So he was, for lack of better words, he was jerking Brad around. that I had to call the Whalen president and say, listen, this is holding up 1,000 cars and being built. Because when we first went to the digital message board, and we were the only police department in the country that's digital message board. Whalen was the only one that made it at the time. So we bought the first 1,000 from Whalen. And then after that, it went by who had the best price. It didn't matter, if it was, and most times I didn't. The only thing I ever cared about, and if you do your research, the V bar is by far the best bar when intersections. And even after I left, they did all kinds of testing and evaluations because they wanted to change the bar because there was some politics within NYPD after I left. They wanted to change things. And just like, they re-decaled the cars and they undecaled the cars and they redid that. If you read all those stories with the different commissioners, So, and they looked into it. And there's no bar that comes close to the vision bar with giving light at a 45-degree angle. And most accidents, 60, 70%, maybe 80% of accidents happen at intersections. So my goal was always to have the most amount of light at that 45-degree angle. I mean, there's other things like self-diagnostics in that system. It's also the most, there's actually only one control box. If you ever look in the trunk of a car using Whalen or Code 3 or Sound Off, they have 5 or 6 different boxes controlling the light system. Federal has one box. It's so simple. I lived during the years where EMS, New York City EMS, their whole fleet went out of service. 80% of their vehicles went out of service because they had so much crazy lights and technology built into the ambulances that they were breaking down. They couldn't fix them. Where the NYPD actually had to respec out the ambulances to fix their ambulance back in the early 90s. You could research that. So, like I say, there's reasons why we do what we do, but it's all about officer safety.
How much direct interaction did you have with Brad?
None. I didn't. I mean, I knew who he was, and like if I went to a conference, he would be there. I really had no. I mean, like I hear rumors. There's stuff about his wife and all that stuff, and but just hearsay. There's nothing. I have no direct. I mean, does once in the blue moon would he ask me a question or whatever? That could happen, but there's no real interaction. To be honest with you, he's a guy that's pissed off a nickel's not a dime, in my opinion. So my thing, once again, best vehicle, safest vehicle for the cops, and that's what I'm doing. After you looked up, I'm doing consulting business. I'm identifying the best products around the world to try to help cops and stuff like that. And that's my goal with the rest of my life here, and doing what I'm doing in retirement life. I'm not making really any money, but we're identifying some good products from around the world.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. Okay.
Okay. No problem.
All right. Take care.